Economics is a social science that studies how societies use scarce resources to produce, distribute, and consume goods and services. The branch of knowledge concerned with the production, consumption, and transfer of wealth.
Now listen to part of a talk in an economics class. Unemployment can be a terrible life experience, like a serious automobile accident or a messy divorce, whose consequences can be fully understood only by someone who has gone through it. For unemployed individuals and their families, there is the day-to-day financial stress of not knowing where the next paycheck is coming from. There are painful adjustments, like watching your savings account decrease, selling a car and buying a cheaper one, or moving to a less expensive place to live. Even when the unemployed person finds a new job, it may pay less than the previous one. For many people, their job is an important part of their self-worth. When unemployment separates people from the workforce, it can affect family relationships as well as mental and physical health. The human costs of unemployment alone would justify making a low level of employment an important public policy priority. But unemployment also includes economic costs to the broader society. When millions of unemployed but willing workers cannot find jobs, an economic resource is going unused. An economy with high unemployment is like a company operating with a functional but unused factory. The opportunity cost of unemployment is the output that could have been produced by the unemployed workers. Question: what is the professor's opinion of unemployment? What is implied when the professor says this? The human costs of unemployment alone would justify making a low level of employment an important public policy priority. Now listen to part of a talk in an economics class. The natural rate of unemployment is not natural in the sense that water freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit or boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. It is not a physical and unchanging law of nature. Instead, it is only the natural rate because it is the unemployment rate that would result from the combination of economic, social, and political factors that exist at a given time, assuming the economy was neither booming nor in recession. Now, these forces include the usual pattern of companies expanding their workforce as they would in a booming economy or contracting it as they would during a recession. Also, keep in mind the social and economic forces that affect the labor market or the public policies that affect either the eagerness of people to work or the willingness of businesses to hire. Question: what is the lecture mainly about? What would most likely happen to unemployment during a recession? Now listen to part of a talk in an economics class. Perhaps no economy around the world is better known for its trade surpluses than Japan. Since 1990, the size of these surpluses has often been near $100 billion per year. When Japan's economy was growing vigorously in the 1960s and the 1970s, its large trade surpluses were often described, especially by non-economists, as either a cause or a result of its economic health. But from a standpoint of economic growth, Japan's economy has been in and out of recession since 1990. With real gross domestic product growth averaging only about 1% per year, and an unemployment rate that has been creeping higher. Clearly, a trade surplus is no guarantee of economic good health. Instead, Japan's trade surplus reflects that Japan has a very high rate of domestic savings, more than the Japan economy can invest in domestically, and so the extra funds are invested abroad. Now, in Japan's slow economy, the growth of consumption is relatively low, which also means that consumption of imports is relatively low. Thus, Japan's exports continually exceed its imports, leaving the trade surplus continually high. Question: why are Japan's large trade surpluses not representative of its economy? Why does the professor say this? Perhaps no economy around the world is better known for its trade surpluses than Japan. Now listen to part of a talk in an economics class. The story of modern economic growth can be told by looking at calorie consumption over time. The dramatic rise in incomes allowed the average person to eat better and consume more calories. So, how did these incomes increase? Well, the period of modern economic growth came about because of the way in which technological progress combined with physical and human capital rapidly expanded. Although distribution of income is still an issue, it is clear that the average worker can afford more calories in 2014 than in 1875. Now, aside from increases in income, there is another reason why the average person can afford more food. Modern agriculture has allowed many countries to produce more food than they need. Despite having more than enough food, however, many governments and agencies have not solved the food distribution problem. In fact, food shortages, famine, or general food insecurity are caused more often by the failure of government macroeconomic policy, according to the Nobel Prize-winning economist Amartya Sen. Sen has conducted extensive research into the issues of inequality, poverty, and the role of government in improving standards of living. Macroeconomic policies that strive toward stable inflation, full employment, education of women, and preservation of property rights are more likely to eliminate starvation and provide for a more even distribution of food. Question: what is the lecture mainly about? According to the lecture, what would create a better distribution of food? Now listen to part of a talk in an economics class. Now, the balance of trade, or trade balance, is any gap between a nation's value of its exports, or what its producers sell abroad, and its total dollar value of imports, or the foreign-made products and services that households and businesses purchase. If exports exceed imports, the economy is said to have a trade surplus. If imports exceed exports, the economy is said to have a trade deficit. If exports and imports are equal, then trade is balanced. But what happens when trade is out of balance and large trade surpluses or deficits exist? So, Germany, for example, has had substantial trade surpluses in recent decades, in which exports have greatly exceeded imports. Germany ran a trade surplus of $260 billion. In contrast, the U.S. economy in recent decades has experienced large trade deficits, in which imports have considerably exceeded exports. In 2014, for example, U.S. imports exceeded exports by $539 billion. Now, a series of financial crises triggered by unbalanced trade can lead economies into deep recessions. These crises begin with large trade deficits. At some point, foreign investors become pessimistic about the economy and move their money to other countries. The economy then drops into deep recession. This happened to Mexico in 1995. A number of countries in East Asia, Thailand, South Korea, Malaysia, and Indonesia came down with the same economic illness in 1997, which was referred to as the Asian financial crisis. Question: why does the professor mention the Asian financial crisis? What is the example the professor uses when discussing Germany?